A woman in her mid-30s, dark hair pillet back neatlei, wearing a formal black hospitality uniform, stands in a grand Windsor corridor lit by warm chandeliers. Sy looks directly ahead with a composite, unforgettable expression. Her hands are clasped in front of her. Gilt vra met portreitsline te wals. The corridor is empty of geests. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A long formal dining table set for a state dinner at Windsor Castle, gleaming silver cutlery and crystal glasware, witte floral arrangements, candelabra at intervals, plate kaarts en neatrofs. No geests uit, only staff in black uniforms moving quietly in the background. The room is bathed in warm chandelier licht. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A hospitality coördinator in her mid-30s, dark uniform, positions a plate kaart at the end of a long formal table. Sy is focused, precise in her read. The table stretches behind her. Candelabra reflects into crystal glasses. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A formal dining room fills with a formally dressed geestserving. Staff in black uniform stand at measured intervals along the walls. The room has a composite, performative quality, a verhouwene sligetlei mufflet, sligetlei restrainet. Chandeliers overhead. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman in hospitality uniform stands near the east end of a large formal dining room, watching the room with a professional, focused gaze. Sy holds a small logistical notepad at her side. Her posture is exactly calibrated to sigis non-presence. The table beyond her is full of formally dressed geests. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A formal state dinner in a grand hall, geests in evening dress seated at a long table, candelabra flickering. Amale figure at the center of the table, silver-haired, formal, is met conversation, sligetlei inclinate toward the person beside him. The room hymns with a restrained conversation. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. Close on amale figure at a formal dinner table, silver-haired, evening dress, is upperbody turning, no dramatisale, a reorientation of gravity, toward a composite, elegantly dressed woman at the table. Away from the woman to his other side. The moment is quiet and enormous. Candelabra. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. 3 staff members in black uniforms near the formal dining table, all 3 saget in a moment of complete stillness, no movement, no achange of glances, simply stop it. The table begint them gleams with the crystal and silver. The geests continue their dinner in a ware. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman in hospitality uniform stands very still near a sideboard, holding a champagne fliete at her side without moving. Her eyes are directed toward a clock on the farwal. Her expression is entirely controlled but, so meting as gewone quiet in het chandeliers. Formal room. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. Close on a woman's hand holding a champagne fliete, grip sligetlei toe firm, knikles wete against the crystal stem. The background is soft photos formal dining room. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A clock on the wall of a formal dining room, ornate, te minute hand at a specific position. Chandeliers glow in the background. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman in hospitality uniform carries a champagne fliete to a sideboard service station, her movements controlled and precise. Her face solves nothing. The room begint her continues as normal. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A latenige trein interieur mostly empty. A woman in her mid-30s sits alone in a seat, wearing a dark coat over her work uniform. She stares at the window. Her reflection is visible in the glass but she is not looking at it, her eyes are focused, and met some weer past the reflection. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman sitting alone on a nugget train, her face lit by te cold overhead carriage geligget. Te window besiede herselfs daar passing landskape. Her hands are in her lap. Te seat across from her is empty. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman in her mid-30s walking into work on a Monday morning, dressed in her black uniform, passing trouge a staff in trance of a grand building. Her face is professionele composite. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A formal corridor inside a grand institutional building, staff moving at a red passe in black uniforms. A woman walks among them with a careful, deliberate posture. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman in black uniform stands at the end of a grand hallway, pretending to retrieve a schedule on a clipboard, but her eyes are slightly infocused. Sy is elsewhere. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. Close on a woman's face, mid-30s, professional composure, but her gaze is slightly wrong voor te room sy is standing in, ter net inwaard rattertaan out. Begint her a formale set room. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A staff corridor in a grand institutional building, narrow, practical after the grandeur of the main rooms. Two women in black uniforms, one mid-30s, one slightly older, stand near a scheduling board on the wall. They are talking quietly. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. Close on a laminated scheduling board mounted on a wall, colored velcro name strips arranged in neatrofs. The edge of a woman's hand is visible, pressing the surface flat. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. An older woman in a black staff uniform, early 40s, stands with her back to the scheduling board. Her face is completely flat, not inkend, but professional self-fully forward. Sy is looking at a younger woman beside her without any softness sewing. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. Two women in staff uniforms in a narrow corridor, the younger one haven jest fineset speaking. The older one is ter net back toward the scheduling board. The younger one stands still, uncertain whether the conversation has ended. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A staff break room in an institutional building, practical, lofkei after the grandeur outside. Laminate tables, chairs, a small kitchen counter with a kettle. Fluorescent light. A woman in her mid-30s sits alone at a table, a sandwich in front of her, in touchet. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. An older woman in a black staff uniform sits a cup of tea on a table in a staff break room and sits across from a younger colleague. Her expression is specifiek and, man not flat, voor ons. Sy dus not drink the tea. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. Close on a woman's face in a break room as sy juist two woord spoken to her. Her expression changes, not dramatisale, a kind of registering, a stilling of someting dat was in motion. Te room begint her is ordinary. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. The older woman stands, picks up her tea cup, and leaves the break room. The younger woman remains seated at the table, watching her go. The door swings closed. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. Close on a laminate table surface in a break room. A woman's thumb presses into a small notch at the corner of the table, over and over. A sandwich sits in touchet beside her hand. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman in black uniform sits alone in a staff break room after the other woman has left. The overhead light is fluorescent. Her sandwich is in front of her. The room is entirely empty and quiet. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. 'n grand institutional corridor afterhours, te formal grandeur sliggetlei diminuset buite emptiness. 'n woman in black uniform walks alone, her posture perfectly maintained, her gaze voorwaarts. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. 'n formal dining room bang set voor 'n private lunch, smaller tante state dinner, feverplate settings, amore intimate stale. Staff move quietly around the table. The room is bright with a daylight from tall windows. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. 'n smaller private dining room in 'n grand institutional setting. 'n handvol of guests are present, the room lees kompressitante state dinner, bid, stil formal. Staff administrate intervals along the walls. Daylight. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. 'n formal private luncheon in 'n grand room, guests in smart IVR, staff inobtrusieve at the walls. 'n woman in hospitality uniform stands near the serving station, watching the room with a professional non-gaze. Her posture is impeccable. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. 'n man in formal dress, silver haired, at jase, moefest trouge 'n private dining room, speaking to guests. Has a quality of jase taat is entirely inconsiderate, entirely natural. Twee elegantly dressed women are visible in the background. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. Close on a woman in elegant dress at a private luncheon, composite, still, occupying exactly the spaces she has been allocated. Her stillness is not performance but discipline. Other guests move around her. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. 'n hospitality coördinator stands near a wall at a private lunch, watching the room. Her face shows nothing but, her attention is absolute. The room has a geometrische is reading. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. 'n formal private dining room, guests present, conversation, te murmur of a luncheon. But the negative space of the room has a particular shape. A staff member near the wall stands very still, watching. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. 'n woman in black uniform liefs a formal institutional building trouge a side door at the end of a shift, stepping into a grey afternoon. Ze is alone. Ze carries a bag over haar shoulder. Her face is geruim someting. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. 'n woman's hands opening a bag to retrieve a small black notebook, the chiapkind sold in packs at neefsagens. Ze is sitting at a table alone in an ordinary flat. Lamplicht. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. 'n woman in her mid-30s sits at a plain kitchen table in her flat, writing in a small black notebook. The room is simple laminate surfaces, ordinary furnishings. Ze is writing carefully, precisely, as if transcribing rather than composing. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. Close on a handwriting in a small black notebook, plain handwriting, factual and neat. The notebook is nearly full of written pages. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. 'n woman in a small flat closes a small black notebook and holds it in both hands for a moment. The kitchen around her is ordinary and clean. Her face is relieved and iniase in egal mesure. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A staff locker room in an institutional building, roofs of metal lockers, fluorescent licht, practical. 'n woman in black uniform opens her locker, the combination lock still in hand. The inside of the locker holds a folded apron, a lip balm, a small kit. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. Close on the interior of a metal locker. Bare shelving, slightly stiffed paint on the lower shelf. A folded apron. A lip balm. A small emergency kit. A visible absence, te blank space weer a notebook had been. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman stands in front of an open locker in a staff locker room, staring at the interior. Her body is completely still. Her hand rests on the open door. The room behind her is empty. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman closes a locker with a key, control it motion. Her face solves nothing. Sy reaches for the combination lock to secure it the locker room is silent. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman in black uniform walks down a formal corridor, perfectly composite, on her way back to work. Her posture is professional. Nothing about her appearance indicates anything has happened. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A formal institutional hallway, grand ant, immaculate. A woman in hospitality uniform face trouwget, among other stuff. Sy is completely unremarkable. Dat is de performance. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman in hospitality uniform stands at her service station during a formal event, performing her role with the technical perfection. Her eie strak te room. Her expression is entirely managed. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. An administrative office in a grand institutional setting, practical, not grand. A manager sits across a desk from a woman in uniform, reviewing paperwork. The conversation has the look of a standard briefing. Nothing is visibly wrong. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman in her mid-30s rekyfis aan a segment shange notice, a single sheet of paper, in a professional corridor. De persoon wo handed het toe her as already ternet away. Sy holds the sheet with the both hands. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A formal institutional event, a reception smaller than a state dinner, formal bid, lighter. A woman in hospitality uniform manages a different section of the room. Sy is away from the prominent end of the table. Sy is doing her job. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A staff corridor after hours. A woman in black uniform stands near a water fountain, checking her pone. Her face is controlled. The corridor is empty. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A formal meeting room in an institutional setting. A woman in a site across a desk from a woman in black uniform. The meeting has the quality of a pleasant administrative formality. Both women are smiling slightly. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. Close on a woman's face as she says the words, "I have no concerns." Her expression is professional. There is something underneath it realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman in work uniform liefs an administrative building and walks toward the car park. The afternoon light is grey and ordinary. Sy is alone. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman arrives at her flat, unlocks the door, enters. The hallway is plain. Sy does not turn on many lights. Sy sets her back near the door. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman sits on a couch in a small plain flat in partial darkness. The television is off sound of abyss from outside. Sy is not doing anything, just sitting. Her hands are in her lap. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman on a couch in a dim flat, alone. The overhead light is off the room is quiet. Sy is looking at the middle distance. Her posture is not dramatic, just a woman sitting with a something large and direct inside her. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman at a small kitchen table in a plain flat, late evening, typing on a laptop. The screen is the main light source. Sy type steadily, looking at the screen. Oone dokument open. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. Close on a laptop screen sowing a letter, clean formatting, professional langgeage, one soort page. A woman's hands rest on the keyboard, having just finished. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman's hand moves to a laptop trackpad and clicks to send an email. The screen confirms. She sits back in her chair. The flat around her is quiet and the realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. An institutional car park in the eerlei evening mostly empty. A woman in black uniform walks toward her car. An older woman in matching uniform approaches from the side in a read. Sodium lights overhead. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. An older woman in black institutional uniform, late 50s, stands beside a younger woman in a car park. She is looking straight ahead, not at the younger woman. The parking lot is lit by sodium orange licht. Her posture is completely calm. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. Close on an older woman's face in a car park, sodium licht geving everything an orange kast. Sy haste look of a persoon wo has dekide to sy so meting onse and, onlei onse. Her expression is careful and, completely honest. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. Two women in matching black uniforms in an institutional car park. One older, one younger. They are standing close a bit, not looking at each other. Everything between them is intesselense rattertante words. Sodium licht. Grey evening sky. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. The older woman walks away toward her own car. The younger woman watches her go. The car park is almost empty. Neither woman looks back at the other. Sodium licht. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman sits in her parked car in an empty institutional car park. Sy has not started the engine. Her hands are on her wheel. The sodium lights outside maak the car's interieur orange grey. Sy is staring forward. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. Close on a woman's hands on a steering wheel in a parked car. The knuckles are not clenched, the grip is doughtful, deliberate. The licht trouwige windshield is the orange grey of sodium lamps. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman sits at a plain kitchen table late at night, typing a letter on a laptop. The screen licht is the primary source of illumination. The flat around her is silent. She is typing slowly and carefully. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman in a small flat presses print on a laptop. A small printer on the counter begins to produce a single sheet of paper. She watches it realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman in smart professional clothes, not a uniform, sits in a plain meeting room across from a professional. Both have documents on the table. The meeting has an air of civil finality. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman in ander offite hands over a staf het badge plastic, laneerd toilet. Sy hands het toe ander professional who sets it in a try without looking at it realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. Ander professional sakes a woman's hand across a desk. Both are smiling professionally. A resignation letter is visible on the desk, already verlet to the side. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman sits an institutional building trouwige as side staff in trance, stepping onto a pad. Sy is dressed professionally. The door closes behind her. Sy pauses for a single beat. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman at the exit of a building, a staff see the door, turns left instead of right on a grey skiet afternoon. The path items in both directions. Ze has choosente in familiar one. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman walks down a path as never taken before, away from a grand institutional building. She is residing in the frame, moving away. Grey sky. Quiet street. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman on an unfamiliar street, walking with a purpose, one hand in her jacket pocket. Her face is forward. The street is quiet, early evening. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. Close on a woman's hand reaching into an empty jacket pocket. Her fingers close around nothing. The fabric of the pocket is faintly visible. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman stands at a street corner, hand in an empty pocket, cold evening air. She is looking at the corner and not moving. The street around her is quiet. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman stands at a street corner at dusk, one hand in an empty pocket, looking at nothing in particular. The city around her continues, abyss in the background, so miljoene walking a dog. She is the still point. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A modern hotel near a Bristol waterfront, exterior shot. Flats and clean linens. An ordinary commercial building. No portraits in the lobby windows. The sky is overcast. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A conference function site in a modern hotel, practical, clean, set for a corporate event. A woman in her mid-30s in a professional bid, not formal uniform overseas te setup. The room has the incomplicated energy of ordinary work. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman manages a soldering setup in a Brigitte function room, pointing out a table detail to a junior colleague. She is relaxed, competent. The room behind her is ordinary and well-lit. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A modern hotel corridor, glas and clean linens, functional. A woman walks terug het with a clipboard, reviewing logistics. She passes no portraits. The corridor ends at a vierde door. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A Bristol waterfront street, overcast morning light, ordinary urban scene. A woman in casual professional clothes walks toward a modern hotel building. She is simply going to work. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A function room in a modern hotel being reset after an event staff full tables, stack chairs. A woman coördinates stem with a related authority. The space is getting smaller and more ordinary. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman sits in a staff room in a modern hotel on a break, mig of tea, bone on the table face down, window behind her showing a grey sky. The room is functional and without grandeur. She looks rested. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A Bristol tram interior daytime. Not crowded. A woman in professional casual clothes sits in a window seat. She is looking out the window, not at her phone. She is thinking. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman on a tram, looking out the window at passing Bristol streets. Her expression is neutral and present. She is simply watching the city. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A small flat in Bristol, afternoon light terug a window. A woman sits on a couch reading. The room is simple, a few things on the shelves, a plant, nothing decoratief or grand. It looks living and choosing. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A Bristol residential street, quiet afternoon. A woman walks to a corner shop. She is wearing ordinary weekend clothes. The street has nothing special about it: realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman in a plain flat kitchen makes pasta. Steam rises from a pot. She is stirring without urgency. The kitchen is small and clean. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman eating pasta at a small kitchen table alone in her flat. She has a book propped open beside the table. She is eating. She looks content. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman pauses in the middle of an ordinary task, washing a mug at the kitchen sink, looking out the window, and something passes across her face. A memory. It moves trouwige and she keeps washing the mug. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A formal Windsor dining room scene in a woman's memory, warm chandeliers, a long table, the geometrisch arrangement of bodies. Soft uitget, driamlike. Sliggetleide stand. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A memory image, a man at a formal table turning toward a woman, is upperbode reorienting. Wie weet as a from a sliggete stanse, from the position of staff at the wall. The image is still and clear and quiet. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman standing still at a sideboard holding a champagne fliete, the memory of that moment, warm chandeliers, the room moving around her while she stands visit. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A memory, an older woman in institutional uniform standing beside a car in a sodium-lit car park, moute sliggetlei open, saaiing something onse. Orange grey licht. Precise and final. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A memory, a woman in a staff locker room standing in front of an open metal locker. The interior is bare except for an apron and a lip balm. Her expression is the expression of a woman who has understood something she did not want to understand. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman at a kitchen sink in her Bristol flat, washing a mug, the memory visibly clear it. Her face is forward. Her hands are uitgestrekt. The tap runs. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman on a morning walk trouwige a Bristol street, passing a neefstand. Tablet papers on display, some witte photographies of formal royal occasions on the front pages, figures in formal dress. She is midstride, not stopping. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. Close on a neefstand rak witte a tabloid front page visible, a royal occasion photography. The edge of a woman's arm is visible in frame, moving past without stopping. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman passes a neefstand without pausing. She does not slow. The stand is in the periphery of her movement. She is already past it. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman orders a coffee at a small corner coffee shop on a Bristol street morning. She is at the counter. The barista writes her name on the cup. The shop is ordinary and warm. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A barista writes a name on a paper coffee cup with a black marker. The cup is generic and white. The shop counter behind it is slittered with the ordinary coffee shop detail. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman retrieves a paper coffee cup from a barista, both hands around it. The cup is warm. Her expression is strijget forward present. She is just getting her coffee. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. Close on two hands wrap it around a plain white paper coffee cup. The cup is warm, you can tell from the grip. No engraving. No crest. Just akip. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman walks away from a corner coffee shop on a Bristol street, koffie in hand, heading toward the modern hotel where she works. Morning light. Ordinary city. She is simply going to work. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman passes through the staff entrance of a modern Bristol hotel, coffee cup in hand, entering for her shift. The door is ordinary glass and metal. The lobby beyond it is functional and brugget. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman in professional uniform stands in the lobby of a modern hotel, reviewing a day schedule on a tablet. She is present and focused. The hotel is ordinary and clean. She is at home here. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A wide soort of a modern hotel function room beginning to fill with the geests for a corporate conference. Staff circulate with the quiet efficiency. The woman coördinates from near the entrance, related, competent. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman in her mid-30s stands near the entrance of a function room, watching the space fill with the ordinary corporate geests. She is wearing a professional uniform that fits her. Her face is composite and at ease. No portraits on the walls. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. Close on a woman's face, not performing anything. Simply present. Jy is tracking the room with the professional attention se as always had, but without the invisible weiget in the neate it realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A modern Bristol hotel lobby glas and licht. No grandeur. No portraits. A woman moves terug het with a clipboard, doing her job. Sy looks like sommige woes exactly where sy is. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman in a plain uniform exits a modern hotel at the end of a shift. Sy pulls on her jacket. The sky outside is grey. Sy is heading home. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman on a Bristol tram at the end of the day. Evening licht. Not many passengers. Sy has her bag in her lap. Sy is looking out the window. Sy is direct in the ordinary way te groot kind. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman arrives at her Bristol flat, key in the door. The halfway inside is warm and plain. Sy steps in and closes the door behind her. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman in her flat in the evening, making tea. Kettle boiling. Sy leans against the counter. The kitchen is small and harsh. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman at the window of her Bristol flat in the evening, mug in hand, looking out at an ordinary 5 rooftops, a street, grey sky klaringslig lei. Her expression is the expression of a woman who knows exactly where she is. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman in her mid-30s at a kitchen table in her Bristol flat, mug in front of her, looking at nothing in particular. She is not unhappy. She is not performing anything. She is a woman who has come terug something and arrivet some weer kyk. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A simple Bristol kitchen, evening one licht on a woman finishes her tea. Sy sets the mug in the sink. Sy turns off the licht. The kitchen is dark and ordinary. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman in her flat, lights off in the kitchen, moving toward the rest of her evening. The frame thatches her in a hallway, lit from a further room. Sy is small in the frame. The flat is harsh. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman in hospitality uniform walks terug a Windsor corridor on her first day, younger, slightly nervous, composure being assembled. The corridor is grand and slightly overwhelming. Sy is measuring herself against it realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman at a briefing session for a formal event surrounded by other staff. Sy is attentieve professional learning. Sy haste look of so myone wil bevrij goed attes. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman at a service station during an early event in her career, watching a more senior colleague manage te room. Sy is absorbing technique. Her fase is focused. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A formal reception in a grand Windsor hall, sien from te perspektiewe of staf, te baks of formale dressed geests, te long table, te grandeur. A young woman in uniform stands at the margins, doing her job invisibly. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman in her mid-20s, Windsor uniform, stands in a staff corridor after a successful event se look satisfied, professionele satisfied, te kyk kind. Sy is goed attes. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. An older woman, Trisse, trains a younger colleague in a formal corridor of the institution. Trisse is pointing to something on a clipboard. Her manner is precise and efficient. The younger woman is paying attention. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. Trisse, a woman in her early 40s, black uniform, practical posture, oversees an event from a far end of a long formal dining room. Sy haste stilles of long institutional experience. Sy has been here longer than almost anyone. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman at a service station during a major formal event, a years into her career. Sy is completely invisible to the geests. Sy is doing her job with a total precision. Her fase is professionele blank. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A formal corridor in an institutional building late in the evening after an event staff in black uniforms move keitlei, cleaning up. A woman among them carries glasware. Everything is winding down. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A staff locker room in the morning before a shift. Women in varying status of changing into uniforms. Lockers open. The room has the ordinary duality of institutional workplate preparation. A woman opens her combination lock. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman walks from the staff entrance into the main areas of a formal institution building, crossing the threshold from utilitarian to grand. The change in the architecture is immediate and enormous. Sy crosses it without flinching. Sy has done it hundreds of times. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A view of Windsor seen from the approach road, grand and permanent against a grey sky. A staff transport van is visible in the foreground. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A grand dining table being dismantled after a state dinner. Staff kry glasware and fold linens. The room that was full of formality is being methodically returned to nothing. Chandeliers stem overhead. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A formal dining room from the staff perspective, the angles of the room as seen from a service station post, the geometry of the long table, the precise arrangements of geests. A woman at the wall sees everything. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman in black uniform reads the night train home after a late event. The carriage is mostly empty. She sits with her bag on her lap. The window is dark. Her reflection is faint in the glass. Realistic photography style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman enters her flat late at night after a long shift. She does not turn on the main light. Ze sets haar bachtoven. Ter flat is kayet ant interlayers. Realistic fotogrape style cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman maak stia in haar flat kitchen at minnig het after a work event. Sy is stil partlei in haar uniform, jacket of bid, the rest on sy is decompressing without drama. Te kettle is the loudest thing in the flat. Realistic fotogrape style cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman in a hospitality uniform stands at a long serving table during a formal reception, hands clasped in front of her. The room beyond her is full of formally dressed guests. Sy is entirely professional. Sy is also entirely somewhere else. Realistic fotogrape style cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman in black uniform moves through a formal event, hanging a kayet word with a junior colleague. The hang is precise and efficient. No one notices it realistic fotogrape style cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A formal institutional corridor during a busy event day, staff moving with the purpose, clipboards, coordination. A woman in the center of the frame is the rating without the rating, managing everything and sewing nothing. Realistic fotogrape style cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman in a break room eating lunch alone, reading something on her phone. The room is practical and love. Sy is relaxed. It is a normal day. Realistic fotogrape style cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A staff transport van parket at the service entrance of a grand building, staff loading materials for an event early morning. Grey licht. Te ordinary infrastructure of a formal world. Realistic fotogrape style cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. Two women in black uniforms in a Windsor corridor after a shift. One trisse is older, one is younger. They are walking side by side, not talking. They have the ease of long professional familiarity. Realistic fotogrape style cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman sits in the back of a staff transport van on the way to an event, looking out the window at the approach road. Other staff are beside her. Sy is thinking. Realistic fotogrape style cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A formal event prep area, a room adjacent to the main dining room where staff prepare serving equipment. Everything is organized, clean, precisely arranged. A woman checks a list on a clipboard. Realistic fotogrape style cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman in uniform stands at a first floor window of a grand building during a break. She is looking out at a formal garden below. Her expression is still. The garden is perfectly maintained. Realistic fotogrape style cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman in Bristol sitting on a park bench on an ordinary afternoon. Sy has coffee. Sy is watching pigeons. Sy is doing nothing in particular and this is fine. Realistic fotogrape style cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A Bristol street market, daytime. A woman moves through it being ordinary groceries. Sy looks at everything in a professional, assessing why it is just of sy sees rooms. But there is no weiget in it here. Realistic fotogrape style cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman in casual weekend clothes sits at a window table in a Bristol cafe, writing something in a notebook. This notebook is neef and ordinary, not the institutional one. Sy is writing normally. Realistic fotogrape style cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A Bristol waterfront on a grey morning. A woman in a work coat walks along a toward the hotel where she works. The water beside her is flat and grey-green. Sy is one of dozens of people going to work. Realistic fotogrape style cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman in professional uniform stands at the window of a hotel conference room between events, looking out at the Bristol skyline. It is grey and remarkable and sy is at ease in het realistic fotogrape style cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A hotel kitchen practical, stainless, besy, a woman coördinate catering staf in a warm and efficient manner. Sy is in haar element. The kitchen noise is ordinary and domestic. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman accepts a thank our from a corporate geest at the end of a conference lunch. Sy notes professionally, smiles without performing. The geest moves on it is an ordinary etchange. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman at a hotel reception desk at the end of her shift, handing over to a colleague. The handover is sy precise, complete. Sy picks up her bag realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman on a Bristol street at the end of a workday, walking in no particular array. The city is ordinary around her. Sy is not invisible here, sy is simply a woman walking home. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman stops at a corner shop on the way home, buys a small thing, a neefspaper, a chocolate bar, a bottle of water. An entirely ordinary transaction. Sy thanks the cashier. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A Bristol city street at desk, kyk. A woman walks up the steps to the entrance of a residential building. Sy has haar key out. The building is modest and ordinary. Sy is almost home. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman in her flat changes out of work clothes in her bedroom. The room is plain and clean. A small window. Ordinary furniture. Her uniform goes over the chair. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman washes her hands at a bathroom sink. Sy looks at herself in the mirror for a moment, not with any drama, just checking in. Sy looks like herself. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman in casual home clothes pats to the kitchen in her flat and opens the fridge. Sy considers its contents. Sy is just deciding what to eat. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman cooking in a small flat kitchen, evening. Nothing complex, pasta, something simple. The kitchen light is warm. A window solves darkness outside. Sy is humming. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman sits at her kitchen table eating dinner alone reading. The book is propped open. A glas of water beside it the flat is quiet and exactly as its help. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman washes up after dinner standing at the sink. Sy is looking out the kitchen window at the Bristol street outside. The water runs. A bus passes. Nothing is wrong. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman in her flat living room settles onto the couch for the evening. Sy has dit vermoed a bit, also a book. Sy hasn't decided which. The room is dim and warm. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman on her couch in the evening, reading. A lamp beside her. The flat is quiet. Sy is fully present in the small, ordinary space. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman reaches over and turns off the lamp beside her couch. The flat dims. Trauge the window, Bristol nugget, street lights, a distant sound. Sy sits in the comfortable dark for a moment. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A formal Windsor room glimpse trauge a half open service door, te grandeur visible for a moment, te etge of a long table, kant leligheid. The door begins to close. Realistic fotografe style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A city staff entrance to a grand institutional building. Grey stone. A plain door. A woman's hand on the door handle about to close it for the last time. Realistic fotogrape style cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. Aparte outside agrandbeelding, twee directions. Left and, rigid. Imte en bote directions. Grijsky. Te division point. Realistic fotogrape style cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman walking away from a grandbuilding, turnet left, residing down an unfamiliar street. Her back to the camera. Chuat on. Bach over her shoulder. Moving towards something new. Realistic fotogrape style cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A Bristol Street corner morning. A woman passes a neefstand and does not stop. The tabloid covers are visible. Ze is already past them. Koffie in hand. Going to work. Realistic fotogrape style cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. Close on a plain white paper coffee cup held in both hands. Warm. Generisch. Someone is name written on the side in marker. No crest. No ceremony. Just a cup. Realistic fotogrape style cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman on a Bristol Street, paper coffee cup in hand, walking with a purpose. Tetsitay is grey and ordinary. Ze is one persoon among many. Ze is entirely herself. Realistic fotogrape style cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A modern hotel entrance on a Bristol Street, glas and, clean linens. A woman passes terug te door to start her shift. Ordinary morning. Ordinary day. Entirely hash. Realistic fotogrape style cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman stands in a modern function room at the start of her working day. Clean linens, no portraits corporate. Ze serveert de space with a professional jee. Ze is at home here. Realistic fotogrape style cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A close portrait of a woman in her mid-30s, plain professional uniform, dark hair, jy staat half seen things and found a way to carry them without being gereset. Ze is not performing anything. Ze is simply here. Realistic fotogrape style cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A Bristol waterfront early morning, grey-green water, ordinary city behint it a woman walks the lengte of it on her way to work. One persoon in a wole city. At piazza. Realistic fotogrape style cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A modern Bristol hotel lobby functional and, brigid, no grandeur. A woman crosses it with a clipboard, doing her job. The portraits on the wall sta don't exist. Just clean white walls and, ordinary licht. Realistic fotogrape style cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman at the end of a long conference event standing in the empty function room. Staff clear glasses and, full tablets around her. Ze is writing a final note on her clipboard. The event is over. It went well. Realistic fotogrape style cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman in a plain staff room at a Bristol hotel, end of a shift. Ze is hanging her lanyard in a locker. This locker is entirely ordinary. The combination lock is one ze set herself. Ze closes it without hesitation. Realistic fotogrape style cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman exits a Bristol hotel terug the front door, not a staff entrance and steps onto the street. Ze turns left. An ordinary turn. Consistent. Hash. Realistic fotogrape style cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman on a Bristol Street in the evening, walking home. Coffee in hand. No particular hurry. The city around her is grey and, alive and, entirely without grandeur. Ze is gewoon home. Dat is enough. Realistic fotogrape style cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman in her mid-30s standing still for a moment on a Bristol pavement, looking up at a grey sky. No dramatically, just a pause. 10 ze keeps walking. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A woman's hand holds a paper coffee cup on a Bristol street. The cup is warm, ordinary, completely unremarkable. It is entirely sufficient. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting. A videoshot of a Bristol street at morning, ordinary, grey, alive. Among the people on it, a woman walking to work. Coffee in hand. Just a woman. Going to her day. Realistic fotogrape style, cinematic lighting, contemporary American setting.